offense is greater than defense. At least that's what Jeffrey Lurie had to say yesterday. A lot of people spoke yesterday in the off-season meetings, the owners' meetings for the NFL. Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni, Jeffrey Lurie. We're going to dive into all of that. A little bit of Phillies talk. Tomorrow's opening day. And even some Flyers and media talking as well. So we got a jam-packed show. Trending the AM starts in 30 seconds.
Gets around in front. Joel Embiid
and Philadelphia has it.
And a very good morning, everybody, and welcome to Trending in the AM right here on DSM Media Live. Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. You know the drill. Like, share, retweet, follow. On all social media platforms, do us that favor. Hit the like and subscribe button on the DSM Media YouTube page. It's the best place to get interactive with the show as we continue to grow the brand. And we can answer your thoughts, questions, concerns, comments on all the things we are talking about today. Starting off with our Philadelphia Eagles. I am your host, Phil Stifle, at Beard and Knowledge on Twitter. We've got Jason Voorhees. Let me unmute his mic, sitting there next to me. Good morning, Jason. How you doing this morning?
What's going on, man?
Opening day. We're 8 a.m. So 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3. We're about 31 hours from first pitch of this next Major League Baseball season. I'm excited.
Yes, sir. One sleep away, and obviously a great pitching matchup. Aaron Nola versus Jacob DeGrom. That should be interesting to see how.
Can I say that I'm disappointed a little bit? Like, excuse me, choking here. Opening day is so much better when your first game of the season is at home. Am I right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you get all the pomp and circumstances now. Like the Phillies are going to play, 6 or 8 games, and then they'll be home for the first time. That luster's already worn off. Like, I want the home opener to be game one.
Unless they can go out and go 6-0, to start the season already.
Yeah, then we're talking World Series championship, at the home opener. Anyway, we'll get back to baseball in a few minutes. I want to talk football. Yesterday, obviously, Nick Sirianni spoke with the media. Howie Roseman spoke with the media. Jeffrey Lurie spoke with the media. They're having their owners, GM meetings out there, wherever they're at this year. A lot of talk at these meetings. There's a lot of fluff. You don't get a lot of hardcore details. We started touching on it a little bit yesterday. We did get a little insight into Howie Roseman and the Chauncey Gardner-Johnson situation. So that was pretty interesting. And I didn't listen to all of Jeffrey Lurie's interview. I listened to all of Nick Sirianni's, and I got a lot of notes on it. So we've got lots to talk about. But I want to start with the fun part of this whole conversation. And that is the thing that I think so many people – we've had this conversation on this show before, that Jeffrey Lurie confirmed yesterday, last night in his meeting. Kelly green jerseys will be back as the alternate jersey in 2023 for the Philadelphia Eagles. And everybody is insanely excited about it. And I could care freaking less. I will not be in line to buy a Jalen Hurts Kelly green jersey.
Man, I got to disagree with you.
I know you do. Everybody disagrees with me. Everybody. I hate the Kelly green.
I love that era. I do.
Why? What did we do well in that era? Did we win a Super Bowl in that era?
We didn't win a Super Bowl.
Did we win an NFC championship game in that era?
But you got to.
Did we win a playoff game in that era?
Got to remember.
I could keep going on and on and on.
No, and Phil, you're right about all of that.
That era reminds me of disappointment.
Okay, but listen, that era also brings me back to my childhood and when
absolutely
football. So my first memories are that jersey. Like,
I know, me
literally,
too.
Whether it was bad or good, Randall Cunningham and Reggie White, like those two players that played for this franchise, even though, yes, we didn't win a Super Bowl, unfortunately. But yeah, I love the color. I don't know. I've always loved green as it is. And to me, it's just like it stands out.
I just think that I prefer the black alternates. I would have preferred them to come up with something new and creative, like when the Bengals came up with that white and black trim jersey. Like, you know what? Come up with something new and creative. The Sixers come up with their City Edition different jersey every year. and it's different every year. Some years it hits, some years it doesn't. But to bring back the Kelly Green, and first and foremost, yeah, you, me, Chris Romanelli, who's always on Twitter and been on this show a bunch of times, we're old school. We grew up with the Kelly Green, and I get that. But a lot of the people that are excited weren't even born during the Kelly Green era.
I could see your point on that. It's almost like
what connection do you have to it? Like literally nothing. Midnight Green equals Super Bowls and Super Bowl championships. Kelly Green equals disappointment to me. Like literally early in my sports career, in the mid 80s, early 90s, Eagles disappointing, Phillies disappointing. You don't see me calling for them to bring back the maroon Phillies gear, do you? If anything, I call for the powder blues because at least we won a World Series in that. I don't understand the attachment to jerseys that resulted in losing.
Listen, dude, listen, you're not going to change your opinion. I know I won't change your, but I like I said, I respectfully disagree because that to me, and you're right, it is associated with losing. However, if they bring it back and they win, that'll kind of right the wrongs.
Okay. I don't know. I think you're grasping at straws. You all are completely insane. You know why they're bringing back Kelly Green? Because there's suckers like you and Chris Romanelli and every other person on Twitter that as soon as they post in the online Eagles.com store Kelly Green Eagles jerseys and hats and shirts, you're all going to be throwing that fishing line and your credit card number online, and they're going to reel you all in, and they're going to make a boatload of money.
I'm getting hurt.
I know. See, exactly. I know you all are, and it drives me nuts because it's such a sucker move from the Eagles to do that to you guys.
I know. Soccer.
All right, so have a little fun there because I know that offends a lot. Literally, like my hottest take, I've had wrong takes, I've had hot takes, bad takes, good takes. The one that pisses off the following of me and this show the most is when I bring up how awful Kelly Green is. Again, are you rooting for them to bring back the maroon Phillies gear?
No, but I like this color.
Yeah, I know. But see, maroon is the same time as Kelly Green. So, you got, it was probably your first Phillies jersey was a maroon Phillies era jersey.
Actually, false. It was a powder blue Mike Schmidt.
Yeah, my first was a powder blue as well. All right, let's get on to the actual real important stuff that was talked about yesterday with these owners' meetings and these interviews with the media. And I want to talk. I mean, so Nick Sirianni talked a lot about his coaching staff and getting on the same page. Brian Johnson, Sean Desai, etc. Getting on the same page and how he had all the coaches over for the first day of March Madness. I'm not surprised at all that he had all his coaches over to his house to have a bonding session, so to say. I'm not surprised that he said he beat them all in shooting hoops in the driveway. Like I just picture like a comedy TV show, Nick Sirianni having a bunch of guys over, Nick Sirianni's wife in the kitchen cleaning dishes and him running in, hey, I need some more little hot dogs out of the oven, and her doing all the work while he's having fun. I'm not surprised by all that. But he hyped up Brian Johnson, but obviously Brian Johnson's been around a little while. When he talked about Sean Desai, though, the new defensive coordinator, he brought up he was super energetic, super organized, but he was learning, Sean Desai was, what Nick's vision for the defense is. And I think that was a really key quote there, that the defensive coordinator, whether it was Jonathan Gannon last year, who Sean Desai this year, or whoever's the next defensive coordinator, that we kind of thought or formulated maybe an opinion that the defensive coordinator was completely in charge of the defense. But really, it is Nick Sirianni's vision, what these guys have to kind of implement. And, obviously that vision, it means we're going to see more of it this year, is create turnovers and don't give up big explosive plays, which equals not a lot of blitzing. And that's kind of what I expect out of this defense again this upcoming season.
You know what? It's interesting to me. I remember when we hired Nick Sirianni, and a lot of folks, including myself, kind of bashed the move in a sense, saying that it was like they hired a puppet. here we go again. It's Jeff Lurie and Howie Roseman's show. They're hiring a coach that's going to be a yes man. And I couldn't be further from the truth. Like,
absolutely.
Honest to God, Jeff Lurie spoke yesterday. He actually said Nick Sirianni, he called him relentless. He said he was involved in the interview process. He was the one bringing all these guys in for the interviews. He was the one that made the decisions. That kind of news to me just shows me how wrong I was. Like, Nick Sirianni actually has a lot of power. And
which it's interesting because it seemed like, at least the initial rumors back in 2000 and whatever, that the reason why the Doug Peterson split happened was because he wanted some power and Howie Roseman wouldn't give it to him. That obviously wasn't the case then, if what you're saying and what we're seeing is true. Yeah, maybe he doesn't have the power over the final decisions of players or who's drafted, but the vision and the style of this team, offense and defense, is all on Nick Sirianni. He isn't being told we want to, it was, the rumors that Doug Peterson had to have a meeting every single day after a game with Jeffrey Lurie, and Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman yelled at him for running the football too much in a Green Bay win. Like, maybe some of that wasn't accurate. Maybe some of that was overblown. And I think, him saying, I'm got to convince, teach these new coaches what my vision is, says that he's in full control of this team.
Or maybe it wasn't overblown. Maybe that really is the case. And maybe Howie and Jeff have adapted and kind of matured and grown and realized
that's fair.
Have to let our coaches have some power and some say, because if not,
we'll have another blow up.
There's a lot of, I know it's not a word, incohesion. Cohesion is when everybody's on the same page. There's a lot of,
lack of cohesion.
I firmly believe that, unfortunately, that's what happened when Doug Peterson was here. They all had different kind of visions of what they wanted to do. I think it's more of like a, let's all get in line and kind of grow together.
And from Sean Desai's past, like it almost makes sense that he was the guy brought in here to be the defensive coordinator, because what Nick Sirianni's vision is, not giving up big plays and creating turnovers is exactly what Nick Sirianni has wanted, and that is what Sean Desai is. Sean Desai isn't a blitz happy guy.
You said
Nick Sirianni does not want all out blitzes 60%, and if Eagles fans are expecting that,
you said it.
Yeah, I mean, Eagles fans are going to freak out week one when it's a constant four-man pressure in the quarterback. Everybody drops back into coverage. Now, I think you'll see more man coverage and more press coverage from Sean Desai, but you're not going to see too much. If anything, if I remember correctly, when Jonathan Gannon left and all these names were being rotated in for interviews for defense coordinator, and when Sean Desai's name came up, I think somebody that does stats on Twitter, put up numbers. Sean Desai actually blitzes less than Jonathan Gannon. His style will create less blitzes. And there was one game that he was the defensive coordinator for that he had like a huge blitz game. So his numbers even that kind of bloated his stats. So he is the least blitz happy defensive coordinator you could have. But that's what Nick wants. And you got to put the people around you that buy into the vision. Like, if this is the vision, I have a vision for trending in the AM, and the vision's growing. Breaking news coming soon. The vision is growing, but Nick Sirianni's got a vision. You can't go out and get a Jim Johnson type defensive coordinator to run your defense if you want to have your style of defense run. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
100%. And I think
that's part of that cohesion thing.
It's exciting for us as fans. I mean, I know we're analysts too, but as fans, we should be excited of the fact that Nick is kind of making most decisions. Like, you want the guy that is in the trenches that knows the most to be in control. And it's obvious. And I agree. Go with what you know and go with what you want. Because if you try to be something that you're not, a lot of the times that's when the train goes off the rails.
It's kind of like when I always talk about in NFL free agency, all these teams randomly on the first day of free agency just sign whoever they feel. Like, They don't bring in free agents that fit what they're doing. Let's just go get the biggest name and pay them the most money.
Yeah.
And most of the time, the teams, and I broke this down on a solo episode, a week or so ago, all the teams that spent the most money last year on the first day of free agency, none of them made the playoffs. Well, the Jags did, but the Jags didn't advance far. Like, when you just go and randomly throw money at anybody and don't have a vision of what your team needs to be, and everybody's not on the same page, you just end up with a bunch of mixed-matched parts, round holes into square pegs type situation. So, with that being said, though, obviously there's a lot of talk about this defense, and I want to link this. We're going to get back to Nick Sirianni in a second, but Jeffrey Lurie said something last night, and it kind of links to this defense and what Howie Roseman's been doing. If you think about it, Howie Roseman's not really spent big on defense in free agent contracts at all, over the last couple of years. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was basically brought in here on a one-year trade. Bradbury was brought in here on a one-year prove-it deal. Yeah, we got an extension, but below market value. All the guys on the defensive line, they're either veterans that he's brought back or pieced together pieces. It's not like he's going out there and giving $90 million contracts to defensive tackles or defensive ends. He's not going out there and giving $60 million to safeties. I think this defense is what it is. And yes, you might see a trade for one of those Titan guys or somebody else out there to help booster the secondary or the defensive line a little bit. But Howie Roseman's not going to go bold on the defense. Whether it's he's not going to go get the flashy cornerback at 10. He's not going to go sign somebody for $80 million. This is what the defense, and the reason why I say that, because the most important thing that Jeffrey Lurie said yesterday wasn't that Kelly Green is back. It's that offense is greater than defense. They were his exact words. Offense is greater than defense, which means and tells me that offense is more important. That 10th pick, it might be that wide receiver, Njoku, or whatever his name is. It might be drafting Bijan Robinson. It's going to be drafting another tackle, for the offensive line. You got 2 first-round picks. Offense is most important. You want to be able to score more points than your opponent. That's how you win a game. What do you think about how this theory here?
I mean, I'll go a little step further. I agree with the theory. I think you're spot on in the way that you're reading it. Jeff Lurie also was gushing about Jalen Hurts.
Right.
He made a statement that he may be the most mature 24-year-old on the planet. He's definitely more mature than my 7-year-old son, even though he was mature at that age. Like, he was using all these euphemisms, and that to me, the way that he was raving about Jalen Hurts, almost guarantees that you're right, that they are going to go after offensive players in the draft. Like, I'm not saying they're not going to look at the defense at all. They're not going to.
They're going to find value. They're going to find the Nakobe Dean value in the 3rd round. They might get a defensive tackle if Jalen Carter drops to them. But if they're sitting there at 10, and I ran like 3 mock drafts before the show this morning, and the wide receiver from Ohio State was there 2 out of 3 times. If that wide receiver from Ohio State, the best wide receiver in the class, is there at 10, guys, be prepared for another first-round wide receiver. And I did those 3 mock drafts. Bijan Robinson fell to 30 one of those 3 times. If the wide receiver's there at 10 and Bijan Robinson's there at 30, that is your first-round draft picks right there. I don't love it. I want defense. I love my defensive linemen and offensive linemen. I love the trenches. But Jeffrey Lurie's comment, offense is greater than defense, tells me a wide receiver at 10, if he is there, will be the pick.
It's funny how sometimes their statements
they're showing their cards without showing them.
Like, exactly.
I mean, it really is. I mean, yeah, you could go back to Nick Sirianni saying that, he's still really high on Quez Watkins. He thinks Quez Watkins is, still a viable option. He does more than the stat sheets say. He was saying all these things yesterday. And you know what? Quez Watkins, we need cheap options. He's still on his rookie deal. He was a 6th-round pick. He's not great, but he's not all. I mean, he's a 4, exactly. You can have a worst 4th wide receiver. You still need a better 3rd option. And there's wide receivers. There's a stud wide receiver that might fall in your lap at 10. That's the way it's going to be. It's funny. You bring up Jalen Hurts and, what they're saying. I saw a reporter put it out there. Somebody wrote an article about this. I forget who it was. Chris Franklin, Brian Cameron, somebody that's been on the show many of times, wrote an article yesterday about Howie Roseman, and this is his third chance to extend a quarterback to a massive contract, and he's 0 for 2 so far. He gave Michael Vick that big 6-year, $100 million contract, and then instantly that fell apart. He gave the big contract to Carson Wentz, and then a year later, that completely blew up in his face. Do you think Howie Roseman is at least he's got to be thinking third time's a charm here with giving out big contracts to a quarterback, right? Or do you think there's that little man on his shoulder saying, "Uh-oh, don't screw up again here"?
I mean, listen, when it comes to Jalen, he has it all. It's not like it's just some guy that's super elite as far as talent, but then he's not an asshole like Aaron Rodgers. He's not arrogant. He's not one of these guys that he's just everything about him. His leadership is top notch. His talent level is only getting better, and it's already at close to an elite status. The guy is. Honestly, I think we may have, by taking him in the second round, we may have gotten the steal of all steals, because
it's not a Tom Brady steal in the 6th round, but I get what you're getting at.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll call that the steal of all steals.
Yeah, that's the steal of all steals. Greatest quarterback in the 6th round. So
I guess in this era, let's say that.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, the point I was bringing up, though, at least Michael Vick, there was questions. He was 32. He missed so many years of football, and you gave him that big deal. It was probably a mistake. Carson Wentz, there were questions about his leadership abilities and his health issues. The only question mark you have to worry about with Jalen Hurts is, can he protect his body enough to stay healthy long-term? People saying, well, he's missed games every year. Most quarterbacks are going to miss a game or two every season. And I'll be honest, if the NFL ever goes to an 18-game schedule, which I think they will eventually go to 18 games, you're going to see load management with quarterbacks on playoff teams. You're going to see guys, if they're just a little banged up, get a break later in the season in a game where it's not as important. You're going to see that more often. So outside of the fact that you have to worry, can he protect himself, which he's shown he can, for the most part, protect himself. He's got the least amount of question marks compared to those 3 names at the time of the contracts being signed.
And to further your point, the fact that him protecting himself and his health is so important, that's all the more reason why we would draft Bijan Robinson, because you bring in a running back that's going to protect the health of your quarterback. You won't have to run as much. When you have a running back for a long-term deal, like 4 years at a cheap deal, that gives you 4 years that you could say, hey, Jalen, let's reel back your running a little bit.
Well, so that's a great transition, because one of the things that Nick Sirianni spoke about was the running back room. And the fact that, losing Miles, you had the big name Ezekiel Elliott out there that wants to come to Philly. And he spoke, and these were his words. Well, not his exact words, the notes I took from when he was talking about the running backs. He is super excited to have Rashad Penny here, because he hasn't had that style of running back here for a while. He said Kenneth Gainwell. You all saw what we used him and how he performed in the playoffs. Reminds me, it reiterates the fact that we might not think Kenneth Gainwell is a lead back, but the Eagles are super high on him, and they are going to probably, unless they draft Bijan Robinson, make him the starting running back of this team. That he's going to be out there, maybe not 20, 25 rushes a game, but he's going to be getting 12 to 15 rushes and multiple touches out of the backfield as a receiver multiple times. He is going to be your quote-unquote running back 1. He's excited to have Boston Scott back, obviously. And then he brought up Trey Sermon, kind of the forgotten son, the guy that we brought in mid-season. I don't even know if I think he dressed once or twice, but was like an undressed guy most of the season. He said he's super high on Trey Sermon, that if it wasn't for Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell and the rotation they had, they wanted to find ways to get him on the field. He just couldn't crack that rotation with Miles Sanders there. So is Trey Sermon, because Trey Sermon came out of the draft with a lot of hype. He kind of got lost in the shuffle in San Francisco. Trey Sermon might, if they don't draft Bijan Robinson, you might really see a four-headed backfield of Penny, Sermon, Gainwell, and Scott as that fourth guy. And that might be your running back room right there. Like, they might not bring anybody else in.
And if that was the case, I would be okay. But I just think Bijan Robinson's.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I get the talent that Bijan Robinson is. I'm just saying, if he's not available, if he's not there, like again, I joked about it. I'm not drafting Bijan Robinson at 10. I'm just not. But if he's there at 30, I would take him. But I'm also not trading future assets to move up. Like, I'm not going to take what it takes or give up what it takes to move from 30 to 20 to ensure that I get Bijan Robinson, because it's going to cost multiple draft picks, future assets, whatever it may be. I'm not doing that.
I agree. I'm with you.
Okay. So that was what he talked about with the running backs. Let's see. What other notes do I got here? Very excited about Cam Jurgens. He did not really lean too heavy in the Cam Jurgens is for sure taking over for Isaac Seumalo Poole. He spent more time talking about how Cam Jurgens is being groomed to be the replacement for I almost said Travis Kelce, Jason Kelce. I don't know if that's just a little whatever there, or if that's really the case, and they're still looking for a right guard there. And he hinted at again that he really is high that Blankenship can be the starter at safety. Now, I don't feel comfortable with Edmonds and Blankenship as 1-2. You got to bring in somebody with him. But thoughts on Jurgens? Is there a chance that maybe he's not that? Everybody just assumes he's sliding over into right guard. Is that not that's not necessarily the case in my mind?
Yeah, but you got to get him on the field. I mean, I don't see.
That's fine.
Yeah, I don't see a world in where you say, "Oh, we have to go get a right guard," and then Jurgens is going to sit the bench again for another year. I mean, why draft somebody like that? That to me,
because you know what you do. That's the problem. Like, I love Jason Kelce just as much as every other Eagles fan, but I hate when players, I don't know if I'm going to retire or not, and then they drag their feet. And I know somebody messaged me and said he was almost wishing that Kelce would retire just so that we can move on. And I know it's a hot take, but I get it, because you're dragging out somebody else's career. You're changing things for, the rest of the team and the franchise, for the future there. So I get that philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think maybe they're not prepared to do that yet, but I think come camp you'll see Jurgens getting time there, and okay. I think it would be asinine to have another year of your high draft pick sit in the bench just because he's a replacement for Kelce.
When they obviously both spoke highly about Jalen Hurts and the contract. Do you think the Jalen Hurts contract gets done soon?
I think,
because I really think the Jalen Hurts contract dictates what else they do. Like, they're looking at the guy Simmons from the defensive tackle from Tennessee. He's available, but you got to give him a big extension. But they don't know how much they can give him or to make that trade until you've got the long-term deal in writing for Jalen Hurts.
I know everyone's saying June. I think it depends. I think what they really are hoping is that one of these other guys sign first, so that
that's what I think Jalen Hurts is hoping.
Yeah, and you got to remember, in a negotiation, it's two sides. And Jalen Hurts, don't forget, his agent is really new, and she wants to make sure that she has a good deal in place for Jalen, because if she doesn't, that could stunt her career as far as
it's possible.
If he signs a bad deal and then somebody gets more money, then
Well, everybody's always going to get more money. You got Herbert, Burrow, Hurts, Jackson, all looking for their contracts right now. And whoever signs first, the next is going to get more, the next is going to get more, the next is going to get more. So everyone, unless your name's Lamar Jackson, and who knows what's going on. I mean, that's the thing that came out yesterday the most. So many teams, I know Washington did, I know Atlanta did, quarterback needy teams that are just like, no, we don't want Lamar Jackson.
Why? Yeah.
Don't get it. Like, I don't – maybe it has something to do with the fact that he's representing himself and he doesn't have an agent. Maybe they see his immaturity or his personality too much in those negotiations. Like, I just don't get it.
Is it collusion?
I've seen people say that. I don't know. Like, it literally baffles my mind that Lamar Jackson cannot figure something out.
I mean, he's such a talent.
He is. Like, you're telling me that a team, say like the Washington Commanders, are just 100%, they just said, no, we don't want Lamar Jackson.
They're going to roll Heineke.
No, Heineke's gone. Heineke's on another team now. I forget which team.
Oh.
They're rolling with Sam Howell, their rookie from last year, and they're rolling with Jacoby Brissett. And they're going to have a quarterback battle in camp to see who the starter is. You're telling me you are 100% out on Lamar Jackson? Like, that's my biggest fear is somebody like them go get Lamar Jackson. I'm glad they're stupid. But man, the only thing I can say with Washington, like Atlanta's saying it. Who was Atlanta's rookie quarterback last year that they benched Mariota for? Desmond Ridder?
Yes.
Like, you're telling me you wouldn't want Lamar Jackson over him? I don't get it. The only thing I can say with Washington is they're trying to sell the team. There are bids to buy the team. Maybe they don't want to make a big deal like that. Like, if they have an offer on the table to buy the team, there might be some contingencies that you can't do X, Y, or Z till we take over. Maybe.
Dude.
But it's asinine. It's stupid.
I mean, you talk about a team they're wasting Terry McLaurin's career. Like,
absolutely. Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin, Chase Young, they're wasting all their careers.
Star player on Washington or on the Commanders, I would ask for a trade. I would demand it. I would say I want out.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I wouldn't want to play. If I was a free agent, I wouldn't sign there anyway because I wouldn't play for Daniel Snyder anyway. That's another whole subject.
Franchise. I feel bad for our friends like Trev and Ref the District, who's like, I don't know how. Like, if I was in a big, because Washington was always a big market as far as money wise. They always had good teams. I mean, they won Super Bowls in the '80s, multiple Super Bowls. Mm-hmm. I don't get it.
Well, anyway, I think we'll wrap up Eagles talk there because we got a lot more on the agenda. We're already halfway through the show here, so I want to move. I want to move to some Phillies talk here. Okay, tomorrow is opening day, and you know what's so funny? I'm sitting here on this show for a couple of days now, talking negative about the Phillies and whatnot, and then I get a text message yesterday from this guy named Jason Voorhees, and it says, "Oh, I'm not feeling good about this Phillies team all of a sudden. It's about time you come over to the dark side." Bailey Falter obviously struggled yesterday. But you know what? It was his only struggling start in all of spring training. I'm willing to move on from that. The first thing I want to say about the Phillies is yesterday's game was probably what you're going to see starting lineup-wise when the Phillies face a left-handed pitcher because there was no Dark Hall in the starting lineup. Okay? And I want to get your thoughts on this lineup here. So the way the lineup went yesterday was Trey Turner in the leadoff spot, Kyle Schwarber 2, JT Realmuto 3, Nick Castellanos in the 4-hole, Bryson Stott 5, Bohm 6, Jake Cave 7, Sosa 8, Marsh 9. Sosa played third, Bohm played first, Schwarber was the DH, Castellanos played in right field. That is the lineup you're going to see at first against left-handed pitching. And let me tell you something. It scares me. Just as much as you're scared about the starting pitching, it scares me that that's not a World Series lineup there. It's not.
It's not. Which is funny because that goes back to how you've been telling people for weeks that everybody that's saying, "Oh, we're going to just be fine without Bryce Harper" is nuts because Bryce Harper in the lineup makes all of a sudden turn around and say, "Wow."
Because then you take Jake Cave out of the lineup and you put Bryce Harper in the lineup, So, it's like that lineup, that is going to be your lineup. And I know Bryce Harper yesterday spoke that he'll probably won't be able to play the field this year, but he'll be back eventually. But he was like, but we have all the confidence in the world in Jake Cave. So he was hyping up Jake Cave, and I know he's had a strong spring. He's earned that right to get that final roster spot on the bench. But is Jake Cave a starter on? He's what I talk about all the time in sports. Starters on bad teams that get stats because they're only getting the playing time because the team's bad. Jake Cave does not start on a World Series baseball team.
Here's where I get frustrated. And once again, this goes back to, why it gets annoying when they get into these analytics and shit.
Yeah.
Derek Hall, to me, listen, whether or not he can hit lefties, you have to find out.
Yeah.
You gotta let the guy play. Like, if you're gonna go with Derek Hall and he's gonna make your roster and he's a power thumping bat, let him play. Yeah. Like, what would the difference be if you put him in there and just let him roll, let him hit lefties, let him learn and get better? How's he ever going to get better?
Yeah, I mean, like, let's be honest. Like, Jake Cave, I remember looking it up a few days ago. He's like a career 210 hitter in the Major League Baseball. I know he's had a really strong spring, but let's be honest. He's not going to all of a sudden hit 330 this year for the Phillies and hit 25 home runs. It's just not going to happen. So if you're going to get a 220 even, Jake Cave, or you're going to get Derek Hall playing every day, maybe hits 230 or 240, why wouldn't you go with Derek Hall?
That is my frustration. But I know it's analytics, and I know Rob is a big analytics guy. He is. But you know, it just gets discouraging when you say, okay, well, you lost Rhys Hoskins. We know it was a big loss. How are we going to?
Could you look at this lineup? If you rearrange this lineup and you have Rhys Hoskins in this lineup, it's a totally different ball game. You don't have to, like, they put Bryson Stott in the 5-hole because you're just trying to balance out the lefties and the righties there in the lineup. But Bryson Stott's not a 5-hole hitter. But he's forced to because Rhys Hoskins is not in this lineup anymore because Bryce Harper isn't here yet. Like, to me, this lineup, like the first 2 months till Bryce Harper comes back, it's going to be, we might have some 8-run games, but we're going to get shut out a bunch of times. We're going to give up or have 1-run games a bunch of times at first. The pressure on the pitching staff, which Dave Dombrowski spoke yesterday and said, we are razor thin. They were his exact words, in the starting pitching right now because of Ranger Suarez, because of Andrew Peener, and whatnot. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Nola and Wheeler and Taijuan Walker right out of the gate to not be, Joe check asking about the Nola contract situation. We talked about it a bit yesterday. But there's a lot of pressure on Nola to come right out of the gate, throwing strikes.
Well, listen, the thing that you got to remember is that you do have Trey Turner, and one thing that this team has lacked for years is the ability to play small ball. The element that Trey Turner brings to this team that can help solidify and kind of lessen that, what you're talking about as far as being able to put runs on the board, is that he could play small ball. Having him at leadoff, I think, is going to be a huge difference than having Kyle Schwarber last year as a leadoff hitter, where he really didn't belong. We all talked about it.
But see, I don't think he belongs in the 2-hole like he was yesterday either.
To me, if he's going to be anywhere, it should be 3 or 4. It's an art guy, but I'd still rather have Trey Turner leading off than Kyle Schwarber.
Absolutely. I agree with you on that. But Kyle Schwarber or Trey Turner at this moment is just replacing the production of Bryce Harper. But different style of production.
But Trey Turner set the tone. What I'm getting at is that even though you're looking at it and you're saying this lineup isn't scary, Trey Turner hits a lot of singles. He's a contact hitter. So him getting on base and then being able to steal. Don't forget, steals are going to be up all across Major League Baseball with the new rule changes. Trey Turner could steal 45, 50 bases this year. Like, he's that talented of a guy. Him getting on base is going to kind of wreak havoc because at least he'll be able to, like, say he gets the single. He steals second, goes to third on a ground ball. Then he gets someone hits a, sac fly. All of a sudden it's 1-0, as opposed to last year, all those games where you had an inconsistent offense where Kyle Schwarber would strike out in the leadoff spot. Mm-hmm. You'd have no runs in that first inning. So I get what you're saying, but I think Trey Turner, I see an element. I've watched Trey Turner since he was in Washington. Mm-hmm. He's such a good player. He's only gotten better defensively. We have a top 5 player on this team. Mm-hmm. Bryce Harper's probably a top 20 player. Like, getting Trey Turner helps lessen the blow of Bryce Harper, but I agree with you. The lineup against righties that you saw yesterday, or against a lefty, is not something.
So I want to talk about what I think is the X factor. And tomorrow I'm going to be doing my Phillies predictions. And you just touched one of my lists. I've already been working on my prediction list here. And you mentioned Trey Turner steals. Trey Turner steal number is on my prediction list for tomorrow's show. But the X factor is Sosa. There's a lot of people really high on Edmundo Sosa right now. And I just don't know. I mean, he came over from St. Louis, and I got his career stats. He basically didn't play in 18 or 19. He had like 11 games combined in his first 2 years. Then in 2021, he played in 113 games. He hit 271. He had almost a 350 OB on base percentage, a 735 OPS, a couple wins over replacement. And he was terrible with St. Louis last year, couldn't crack the lineup enough, and then came on strong with the Phillies once he came over here. Had a solid, playoff run with the Phillies. And he's having a great spring, obviously. And there's a lot of people high on Sosa. Now, my question is, what is the ceiling? Like people are really high. I don't think Sosa's going to be as high as people think. But what's that ceiling? Like, can Sosa be an everyday player and be a productive everyday player in this lineup? Because at this moment, because of Rhys Hoskins, because of Bryce Harper, because of Derek Hall not hitting lefties, there's a spot in this lineup almost every day for him. In a different spot, but a spot in the lineup every day.
I mean, I look at Sosa as being a super utility type guy. There's quite a few of those in the league. I mean, think of guys like Whit Merrifield, who was at Kansas City Royal for a long time.
The Astros had somebody during their World Series runs. Not this one, the last World Series run.
Yeah, that was Gurriel.
Yeah. He played like 19 different positions.
So it's good to have those kind of guys.
But what's the ceiling though? Because no lie. If I read the room on Twitter, and nobody's made predictions per se, but the way people are hyping, Phillies fans are hyping him up. They think he's going to be like a guy that's hitting close to 300. That he's going to, he's driven in a bunch of runs. He's hit a bunch of home runs this spring. I think he's got 4 home runs in the spring. People are really hyping him up. So let me just say, over under, if you had to do it. Well, over under, will Sosa start over 100 games this year for the Phillies?
Over.
Okay. Can Sosa hit over 280 for the Phillies this year if he plays over 100 games?
Yes.
Because I think if he starts playing 120 games, he's going to be exposed that he's not that talented.
I think he can hit over 280. Yes. Okay.
All right. I mean, that's interesting because I think if he plays in that 80 to 100 game range, and he's just that super utility guy. Maybe I shouldn't say play in 100 games. I should say start in 100 games.
All right. You want to know my honest opinion? Because this is the problem, once again, with baseball. Like, baseball is a sport where you have to play to be better. It's just like hockey with goalies. Like, if you're not playing, that's what we talked about like Bryson Stott. Like, you have to be able to give in chances and continue, even knowing when you fail, you're going to be back out there. Because if not, it's mental. Baseball is one of the most. It is the hardest sport when it comes to that talent of hitting a baseball. It is.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
That's why only 1% of people ever make it to the major leagues. It's very hard. But if you don't give guys the opportunity, a lot of times you don't know what you have. That's why you see guys that go to other teams, like for like a change of scenery, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, who's that guy? Like you see it all the time. Jesse Winker, from the Reds, like he was on another team, he stunk. Came to the Reds, all of a sudden he got playing time because they sucked. So he started, and all of a sudden he hit 35 home runs, and you're like, dude, that guy never hit more than 10. Okay, well that doesn't mean you don't have the talent. So if you want my honest opinion, looking at Edmundo Sosa, I believe his ceiling offensive wise is Gene Segura. That's interesting. He's a Gene Segura type player. He's very good defensively. Actually, he's great defensively. Gene Segura never was a power hitter, but he could hit 10 to 15 home runs, hit 280 to 300, knocked in. Look, bring up Gene Segura's stuff.
As you're saying that, I was ready to transition, but now I'm looking up Gene Segura's numbers. Let's see. Let's see. So Gene Segura last year for the Phillies at 270. So he's a 285 career hitter. That's his average over 11 years. He's peaked at 290. He had back-to-back years over 3 years in a row where he hit over 300. In 2016, Gene Segura actually led the league in hits with 203 hits, but he was most of the time around 150, 160 base hits a year. Wow, in that 2016 year, Gene Segura actually finished 13th in the MVP race. I don't know if Sosa's that good, but yeah, he's a 13. Gene Segura averaged 285, 13 homers, 60 RBIs, 100 hits, 28 doubles, 5 triples. So he's a jack of all trades type guy. And he didn't steal a lot with the Phillies, but he was a 25 steal average guy over his career.
That's my ceiling.
It's really interesting. I think that's a great comparison, possibly.
But
you're lucky those numbers fell in line there.
But he has to get the playing time. Like I said, right. He's not going to ever become that if you don't let him go. So sometimes injuries do kind of, I don't want to say they're blessings in disguise, but they bring out like players.
They create opportunities.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. We got 14 minutes left. I want to touch on some more topics here. I know you're a big Flyers guy. Yeah, I know there's a lot of rumors of the sale of the Flyers. I know the president of Comcast stepped down, so new people in charge. But another Philly media, I guess I want to call them. Do I want to say media or do I want to call them, broadcaster? I don't know. Steve Coates is hanging them up at the end of the year. Coatesy Corner, a legendary Flyers segment. Does Steve, as a big Flyers guy, I know not this year, but maybe they're turning the corner, maybe the Flyers, the organization. Does Steve Coates rank up there, like with the loss of Mark Zumoff, the loss of, some of these big names that have retired over the years recently in Philly sports? To me, Steve Coates, is a legend in Philly sports media, sports really. I don't know what you want to call him and all, but he's a legend, and it's going to be sad to see Coatesy go.
Yeah, he's definitely a legend. I don't know if I would necessarily say he's on Zumoff's level, only because Zumoff, Zumoff had more time. Like, Steve Coates is more of like a color guy. He's not like
he was the personality, the color guy, the guy behind the scenes.
Yeah, and so for that role that he was in, yeah, he's legend. I remember Coates back in the 90s. It's like, it was almost like the yin and the yang. Steve Coates and Jackson, the other one.
It'll just be sad to see him go because I think you're going to start to see a lot more of these guys, and it brings up the conversation that I kind of got started with on Twitter yesterday. So my man Frank65, he's a Raiders guy, but he's a strong follower of mine, and we've always had interesting interactions. And he brought up that Michael Barkan and Al Morganti were on the BetCast version, I guess, of a Flyers game yesterday or the other day on NBC Sports Philadelphia. First off, if you don't know, the BetCasts are the alternate viewing. They don't do it every game, but for the Sixers, the Phillies, the Flyers, they'll do these alternate games where they're just talking gambling the whole time. And he was bringing up that basically you're taking two legends like Barkan and Morganti and regulating them to the B broadcast. Okay. And he was talking about, basically NBC doing this is just another, that they're going to fold at some point. They're not going to cover sports anymore. And it got me thinking. So I quote tweeted and I put out there, will NBC Sports Philly eventually fold? What will happen to all the sports games? Another channel, streaming. And then I put out the final part of this. In theory, a channel in Philadelphia like NBC Sports Philly, Comcast Sportsnet, whatever you want to call it, should be super successful. But it's not. And I don't know if it's because of YouTube channels. I don't know if it's because of streaming services. I think it's more once it's switched from Comcast to NBC Sports Philadelphia, NBC just doesn't put the financial investment into it. And in theory, a local ESPN should be a dominant channel, shouldn't it?
Should.
And in my mind, someone like Barkan, you're going to hear his name next on the retirement list of legends. He's not that old, to be retiring. But you're going to see Michael Barkan retire soon because the money's not there to pay these guys. And they're kind of getting pushed out, to an extent. Why doesn't NBC Sports Philadelphia work? Because all they do is show infomercials 24/7. and then they show the games and the pregame and postgame shows, and that's it.
It doesn't work because they don't put the money, the time, and the energy into it. They don't have the mentality that we have as podcasters. They don't look at it as, you have to put the effort in to get the viewership. They just think, okay, if we throw a game on, people are going to watch. Yeah, people are going to watch the game, but they're not watching it because it's because of you, because of NBC. Yeah, I agree. I think you're.
I'm going to bring up Jason Lee, friend of the show.
Great guy.
He commented on this because when the channel was Comcast Sports, they had Daily News Live. It was must-watch TV Daily News Live. And besides the broadcast, now they do nothing. Daily News Live. It was basically, the afternoon drive TV, radio on TV, and you got all the reporters from the Inquirer and the Daily News and whatever website and reporters on this show talking. They used to have the great sports debate back in the day. The sports debate on TV, you see it work on ESPN. You've got Tony Kornheiser and Michael Wilpon, pardon the interruption, they're over 20 years doing that show. And it's still not boring. It still hasn't gotten old. What's the other show with Tony Reali, where they go around the horn, as I was saying. Those shows don't get old. First Take on ESPN, Get Up, all these shows, they work. And you would think on a local level, it should work.
Dude, maybe they should put Trending on the AM on NBC.
Yeah, sure. Why not? They did try it. Didn't they try a breakfast show on there? I'm pretty sure they tried to do a Daily News Live breakfast show for a year or two. What's that? I didn't hear you.
Who'd they have doing it?
Oh, I forget who they had doing it. They had a whole different cast of characters in there doing it. I'm sure. I think Hugh Douglas was on it for a little while. Brett Brooks was on it for a little while. They had all different characters on it.
Listen, NBC, like you said, I think it all comes down to the money. They're not putting the money out to put a good product out. Then you're not going to get viewership. You got to do something. You have to have those avenues. And if you're not going to do it, then why have it?
So is there going to come a time where, because I don't remember how much longer is on their contract. I know a few years back, NBC Sports Philadelphia paid it was a couple $1 billion to get the rights to the Phillies games for a long stretch of time. So I don't know when their contract is up, but is it going to come a time where you're going to have to get Peacock or you're going to have to get Apple TV to see a Phillies and a Flyers and a Sixers game? Or will another channel swoop in? Because there are when the teams are good, when the ratings are good or the teams are good, the ratings are juggernauts. Phillies games during Phillies playoff seasons, juggernauts. Sixers ratings are still through the roof. Flyers, not so much so, but is there going to come a time when it's just you're going to have to pay for it, or will another channel swoop in, or will ABC or Fox Philadelphia, will a local channel swoop in and take that chance?
I could see Fox. They have the money, but once again, it depends on who's making those decisions. I am fearful that it will go to where you have to pay.
Yeah, and it's going to suck.
Yeah.
Do you think that the millions and millions of us content creators, podcasters, YouTubers are part of the problem why channels like NBC Sports Philadelphia don't work? Because there's so much content now to consume.
I do think it's part.
And it's not hard for me to, Chris Franklin wasn't around as a writer during when Daily News Live was there, but Chris Franklin would have been on Daily News Live occasionally if it was still around. It's not hard for me and you to get Chris Franklin on here, or Ed Kratz or any of these guys. The guys that would have been appearing there are literally going on all these different YouTube channels. So you get all their information. All the print work is available online. We've already seen the demise of newspapers because of website writing. Are we part of the problem? Not me specifically because I'm the greatest, but are we, the content creators, the problem?
I don't want to necessarily say it's a problem. It's good for you. It's good for us.
Right.
I think, yes, that is attributing to it because you think about it. Think about all the content that's out there. Dude, think about your day, your daily day. You go to your day job. When you get home, whether you're podcasting or whether you're watching Netflix or whatever your time is, it takes time. So when there's so much content, only so much can get viewed. Like, you can't watch everything.
I agree. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely affecting it. I mean, we talked about before about how the best way to do well and be successful in a podcast is to create a niche. You have to get people to watch something you have to do something that's different. That's why Trending in the AM was such a great idea by you, Phil, because it's a morning show that does better than your typical morning shows on radio where it's all clicky and, the stupid polls that are put up. I mean, we could go on and on and on, but you have to create a niche. Like, think about it. In our local area, there are so many Eagles podcasts, like just dedicated Eagles.
Absolutely. There's literally, I could probably name 100 of them right now, and that would be 10% of it.
Well, yeah, but you have a better chance when you kind of run the gamut and you cover more. Like, and you go the extra mile. You cover golf. There's people that do wrestling. Like, those are the kind of podcasts that I say have a chance at doing more because it's creating a niche. Like, you're getting a better audience. When you're sucked into one audience, it's like, oh my God, it does get watered down. Think about it.
I think it's crazy. I mean, I don't think it's going to end anytime soon because, again, like I said, they paid a huge deal I think they signed like a 10-year, $3 billion contract to play to do the Phillies game. So, and I don't even think that's halfway through it yet. I think that was done right around the time of Bryce Harper. And I think the jokes were that's how they afforded Bryce Harper was because of that contract. So it's not anywhere near ending, but man, I would love NBC Sports Philadelphia to, the channel itself to be bought out by somebody, and let somebody from the Philadelphia area manage that channel the right way, because there's plenty of content you could put on there. You don't need 20 hours of infomercials a day. You just don't. So I don't know. I think we're going to wrap up Trending the AM right there. Tomorrow we'll be back. Well, I'll be back tomorrow. Phillies predictions, Phillies preview, all my final thoughts on what this Phillies season is going to be like. And let me tell you something. You ain't going to like some of my predictions. You're just not. I'm just not feeling it like some others are. So we'll wrap it up today there. For Jason Voorhees, I am Phil Stiefel. Trending the AM, DSM Media. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Ring the bell.
And Philadelphia has it.